All right. Welcome, everybody, on behalf of the National Career Development Association. Welcome to NCDA's webinar series. We are pleased that you've joined us. Before we get started, I want to share some quick technical information for you. During the webinar, your microphone will be muted. We encourage any questions to be typed into the chat section, which can be found on the lower section of your screen. Our presenters can take a look at those, answer them as they go, or we can save time at the end for Q&A. Individuals who have signed up for the webinar can log into their account on the NCDA website to view their continuing education transcript beginning next week. Groups that are attending will need to return their sign-in sheets to me in order to receive their certificates. This program is approved for 1 contact hour of continuing education. For any questions on continuing education, you can contact me, Alicia Cheek, at NCDA headquarters. My contact information was included in your webinar instructions. I would now like to turn it over to Ed Hidalgo to introduce today's webinar and speakers.
Well, thank you, Alicia. It is a pleasure to be here with you. I hope that you can hear my sound, and you just give me a thumbs up if that sounds good to you. Excellent. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here to serve the National Career Development Association and the great work that happens through your organization to serve counselors and the profession of career development across the United States and really globally. The impact that you've made over the decades really can't be questioned, and the work that you'll continue to do, certainly during this time of COVID and beyond, is one that we're certainly excited to support. Today, I have an incredible panel that will be sharing with you a unique ecosystem-wide approach to integrating career development that's happening here in San Diego, California. The title of our session today is Getting the Trajectory Right, and this idea of career development from K, and that's kinder, all the way through to workforce. And I'm going to introduce our panelists here in a bit, but I wanted to start by framing out the work that's happening in the Cajon Valley Union School District. And certainly you're going to hear much more about that from the experts that are doing the work and the leadership team. But without framing out what's happening here, I think it would be much more challenging for our audience to really understand the work. And certainly we'd love to do a deep dive, but we're going to keep it somewhat high level, but still be able to frame the conversation. And so I'm sharing my slide, and as you can see, we have a unique grouping of workforce professionals that are serving to support this work in Cajon Valley. I feel a bit of an insider and an outsider because I've seen the work from the outside and I've been able to step in. But for those of you who are joining and are interested in ecosystem-wide framework, that's what we're talking about here today. And this idea that a school district that's supported by research of the University of San Diego, that's also supported by the primary workforce organization in the region, the San Diego Workforce Partnership and our Workforce Board, and that an amazing Edtech company such as Beable Education and the CEO that we have today would step into our world to help support and advance the work that's happening here. That's what the conversation is about today. And so as this work in a district that has identified a vision of developing happy kids and healthy relationships on a path to gainful employment begins to unfold for every human in the district, it's not without these leaders that this work could be possible. And so you will hear from these voices, these professionals today who have stepped up, the breaking of silos that is making this work possible for every child, every grade, every year, but even more so beyond to this workforce level. This isn't just a K12 or a K14 or a K16 conversation. This is a K to workforce conversation, and you'll hear from our experts today. The thing that we know is so critically important for NCDA is the work of career theory and the research behind the work. And Dr. Ian Martin has brought decades of his knowledge and support as this work has developed in Cajon Valley with Dr. Miyashiro and the staff. And it is through that career development theory that we can begin to contemplate a blending of the world of work and education. And so that students can see their future possible selves in the world of work, but also that educators can see what's possible for students as they develop visions of their future possible selves. And that work with Dr. Ian Martin advanced to work that began to integrate this idea of literacy, life-ready literacy. Without literacy, where will our students be? Where will our adults be in the world of work? There's plenty of amazing research related to the importance of literacy and its connection to employment and unemployment. But as we explore other aspects of the career development framework in Cajon, the importance of self-awareness, the importance of exploration and the journey, understanding what's possible, and for everyone to be able to tell their story continues to be core elements as we prepare students for the essential skills they'll need in the world of work. And so for those of you who are joining and understand career theory and understand the research behind Holland's framework, you'll recognize these 6 themes and these verticals and the explorations that students are able to have within the district that allows them to make those natural connections to the world of work. And as we advance the ability of teachers to be able to do this in classrooms through the leadership of Dr. Miyashiro, we can advance that work through a platform, an Edtech platform that beautifully aligns to the work that teachers are doing, and then expands students' knowledge about not only their place today and their Lexile level today, but the potential for their Lexile growth and where they're headed in the future and why that matters. So imagine all of you that there's an opportunity for every child to not only know their Holland codes, to understand a career that they've identified, and to make that connection between where they are currently as it relates to their Lexile and how that can grow over time. And that an EdTech solution would provide scaffolded readings to be able to support student growth over time so that one day they can achieve their future possible selves. And where we end with the slides and the connection of the parties that we have today, with Dr. Miyashiro, we have Saki Doldeson, CEO of Beable Education. We have Dr. Ian Martin from the University of San Diego. We also have the CEO of the San Diego Workforce Partnership, Mr. Peter Kallstrom, with us. And what you see in front of you is the priority sector boards of top hiring organizations and sectors within San Diego and the county and the region. And as you can see, the Holland codes clearly connected to career paths and careers within our region, the career paths that are most expected to grow over time. So this is a sampling, an idea, a roadmap, if you will, an idea of this unique workforce system. It's a bit of the history behind the work, the partners that came together to make this possible. And from there, we want you to hear from the absolute experts, the ones who are doing the work. And so I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to bring our panel back. And I'm going to get us started by asking Dr. Miyashiro to share, because I know this is a question that's come up on LinkedIn, on Twitter. Most recently, Dr. Miyashiro, people say, we need someone like Dr. Miyashiro who can help us lead this work in our district. Dr. Miyashiro, can you share a little bit about establishing the thinking, the mindset, the reason, the purpose? Why are you doing this work in Cajon Valley?
Thank you, Ed, and it's great to be on a panel with friends. Prior to coming to Cajon Valley, I thought my primary job was to raise test scores, because prior to becoming superintendent, my superintendent would tell me that test scores are important, and that would be attendance, that would be graduation rate, all the metrics that we're held accountable for. And when I got to be superintendent, our board wanted me to go out in the community and talk to people. So I met with the city manager and the mayor, the president of the Chamber of Commerce, and I asked them all the same question. If the school district was yours to run, what would you have us do? And the city manager gave the best answer. He didn't answer me right away. He said, come back next week and I'm going to talk to some people. And he said, David, you need to stop stigmatizing the most important work in our country. And he goes, in San Diego, we have the Department of Defense, Air Force, Navy, Marines. We have in East County, the best manufacturing companies and some of the best real estate and commercial developers in the world. And a lot of those jobs, you learn skills first and then pursue some type of credential or degree. But this college for all mentality is setting a lot of kids up for failure and not allowing them to experience gainful employment right here in their hometown. And that was hard to hear. I didn't know how to respond to that. But then I got to visit Ed Hidalgo at Qualcomm at the top floor of one of the Think a Bit lab, where you were teaching kids about the world of work and giving them a one-day experience about their strengths, interests, and values. And then I met Peter Kallstrom through you, and Peter had created these amazing boards of priority sectors. And out of order, Peter, would you come in and just share what I was seeing for the first time in my career that you were developing out of your early work with the Workforce Partnership?
Yeah, thank you, David, and great to be with everybody. In the workforce development space, 150 workforce boards across the country. In a nutshell, the core purposes of what we do is work with Department of Labor funds and then disperse that in our community. A piece of what we're charged with is being able to understand where they are. So we did that part too, but as is traditional in our work, it just stops the report that doesn't really reach enough customers. It's reaching professionals, but not reaching education. And I was fortunate to work with Ed from the start when I joined the department ago. Ed challenged me because we put out reports, but that's reaching the people who need it, students and educators. So together we created these poster boards, which took our research and made it useful. And that's the start of what's really advanced to invest the RIASEC into these boards and connecting education and workforce. Before that, we had no work in the K-12 space, and now we see that as a big part because we can't stop short with just sports. We got to make it tangible and real and relevant. And so we're on this path. We love it because this now makes our work much more impactful than just dealing with Department of Labor funds in and out in the community. So we love this work, and this is where we need to take it. And having great partners like David and Ed and Ian and Saki, we see the sky's the limit because this can transform education and workforce and prepare our students and workers for great careers.
Thank you, Peter, for your comments, David. I think that opened your eyes, I think, to this whole other side of the work where you were preparing young people for. How did you receive the priority sector boards and starting to experience LMI? What is the role that should play for superintendents?
Well, I got excited about it, and I asked Peter, can I have 27 sets for our 27 schools? And he delivered, and we ran out to the schools and we posted them as if magically now that schools are going to prepare kids for these priority sectors. But right. that didn't happen. So we went back to meet with you and said, can we create a curriculum like the world of work at Qualcomm that could be every day for every child, kindergarten to post-secondary, so we can prepare kids for this work and show parents what's possible. And then we met Ian at University of San Diego, Saki collaborated on the technology side, and we've been hacking, and now we have a product that is actually delivering on these grand ideas, thanks to all the contributors here on this panel. And it's just so exciting.
Well, I think that's a natural point to pull Saki Dodelson into the conversation, because here's CEO, tech leader, Edtech leader, award #1 in the world, I think, Saki, and your claim to fame has been around this aspect of literacy, where you're truly changing lives by helping young people grow their lexile, their reading and joy and love of reading, and then we come together and you start to learn about this career development side of the work. I'm wondering if you can give us some of your perspective on the integration of this work, but the work that you do and kind of the purpose behind why this work should come together, why literacy and career development fits together, and how. We can't hear you, Saki, in the moment, so perhaps there's a mute or...
Okay.
There you go.
That was not me, but thank you. Thank you for letting me speak. I'm honored. I'm honored to be on this panel and honored to be part of this group. And I think in general, it's unique that you have people that are actually coming together and willing to listen and change and think how one and one could equal extraordinary when the child is in the center. So I'm honored to be part of this group. And my experience is, how do you use technology to extend an educators? We all know that if you could have one-to-one teachers, life would be awesome. More kids will be at the level they need to be. More kids will be at college. More kids will be on the path for, college and career. But we don't. So the technology is the ability to take an awesome teacher and extend their reach to more kids, to more time on task, to more homes. And when I met Ed a long time ago, but when I met him again, when he started talking about kids knowing who they are, community know, the gifts that the kids were born with, their interest, their strength, I fell in love. I just fell in love if we can actually marry, the kids' interest and the kids' strengths together with the academic, so we can actually all say we are all in it together to help the kids be on the path for gainful employment. We all like to say that we are born equal. We all know it's far away from the truth. And the difference between the have and have not is the biggest divide. And the ability to look at every child in their eyes and say, you're on your way to gainful employment. You're on the way for equity. It's only when you can combine literacy together with career exposure, together with their strength, together with, their social emotional that they need. So I was all in, and we're still all in. How do we take this group and put it into our technologies that allow every child, not only in California, not only in the country, but across the world, look at them in the eye and say, you are on your way. So I'm just honored and looking to utilize all our talent and all our technology to replicate you guys.
Well, and we definitely want to come back, Saki, and thank you for your vision. And what you've shared it takes no small, it's no small feat. I mean, it's a humongous endeavor, and you've brought the right people together to be able to make it possible. And we want to hear a little bit more about how do you make it happen, and what does it look like and feel like. But first, I want to go to Dr. Ian Martin, because the question that I think that should be coming up in the minds of many of the listeners, whether you're listening to it live or whether you're going to listen to it in the future as a recorded session, is this question around career development happening early. And it's something that we've seen through the work, and it's a question that I think a lot of the adults have, and educators, rightfully so. And I think there's no one who's been closer to it than Dr. Martin has from a research side. So, Dr. Martin, could you share your perspective on the work that's happening? Is career development, starting career development in the early grades, is that good for kids? Can kids do the work? What have you seen? What have you experienced? And what is the message you would have for listeners about the work that you're seeing?
Sure, that's a great question, and thank you very much for creating this panel and creating this opportunity to talk about the work. So I'll just maybe start with a little bit of my background in relation to career development. So this is just an area of my teaching primarily. It's an area of my teaching that I really enjoyed for about 10 years, getting people excited about career development. And I'm a counselor educator, so I work with future school counselors specifically, as well as clinical mental health counselors. And I love that kind of switch saying, okay, they go into a career development class and it's going to be kind of boring. And then we just make it really dynamic. And because career development can be. And so, being able to take that from the classroom and put it into practice is just a really great opportunity. So when it comes to the question, is early better? There's definitely been some question in the research in terms of how early you should start career development. And I think in education, there's an assumption that you should talk about these things maybe in high school or in a transition from high school to college or the world of work. And what we've seen is that many kids want to have these conversations much earlier. They want to think about how what they're doing on a day-to-day basis in the classroom is relevant to their futures. I mean, it just makes it more interesting. And we know that school is so abstract, and trying to connect the dots from why am I doing this algebra? How does it relate to my future? If you ask sixth graders about this, they're going to say that they don't have an idea about why they're doing what they're doing in the classroom every day. And so what we found is that kids really like to talk about this. They like to think about it. They like to investigate it. They like to learn about themselves. And I think that we can even show evidence that kids can make these decisions about themselves much earlier. I was a skeptic. I thought, these RIASEC scores are not going to be stable for the long term. And what we've seen is that they do stabilize at very young ages. So that's at least what we're learning right now in terms of the research. So it's just really interesting discoveries there.
Thank you, Dr. Martin, for sharing. And David, I see you smiling because as an educator, perhaps many of the things that we've seen now in classrooms, a lot of educators haven't seen before. To Dr. Martin's point around, maybe some of these questions and is it possible, and what he's seen. I'm wondering about your experience as all throughout your years of being a principal and superintendent. How are you reflecting on this work, and how is it good for kids?
Actually, I was smiling because I was reflecting on when we first met Ian, and our counselors found out that we were meeting with him. Ian was the professor for most of our counselors, and they would say, Dr. Martin? Anyways, your students reflect fondly upon you and have nothing but positive things to say, Ian. And I think we took comfort in knowing that when you were in on the project, we would do no harm, because you had the research and the guardrails to make sure that as we created this one-of-a-kind curriculum, that we had workforce on one side, but research on the other, to make sure that we were driving down the straight path. And yeah, it's just couldn't have happened without everybody here. And it's just grateful.
Yeah, that's absolutely the key in having the right team members in place with the right knowledge coming together to build the right framework, the right process. And I know Peter's probably processing this quite a bit himself as he's been building new systems at the Workforce Partnership. Focus that was primarily has been on adult workforce and disconnected workers. All of a sudden you see a K-8 system, soon to be K12 in Cajon Valley. And how would you describe the work that we're doing with young people that's happening in Cajon Valley to the work that you're doing at the Workforce Partnership? And why do you think that's important? And what do you think could be the game changer? And what's the thing that our listeners should be thinking about as they think about workforce in their own regions?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for that question, Ed. On a professional level, it's transformative for us because it changes how we do it, who we're trying to, so that we can prepare all of you for great careers and happy lives. Mission about that, because that can go hand in hand. But if we don't have a really strong bridge from education to careers and workforce, then we're doing service to every generation. And this is so important. If we do it right, we plant burgeoning out of every region instead of trying to find elsewhere and bring it back to our region. We need to cultivate that local in all neighborhoods, all zip codes. And this is the important charge now of workforce in my mind. I met 550 boards. I would strongly recommend the attendees reach out to your local board to see what they're doing, what resources they have that explain career pathways in the region and their unique priorities, and how they can be a better partner with career leaders in education, because we can't stop short like we did before with just a slick report that sits on a shelf and gets recycled for a little. That's not good. That's a complete disservice to our work. So it's all there. We just have to keep leaning in and doing more. And I love what Miyashiro said there too, where the poster board was great, but then there was the realization it wasn't good enough. It's still a very valuable resource. Let's keep it. Let's make much more tangible, relevant, and personalized, and then you can change it. So don't stop short, keep going, and then you can really change the trajectory of lives across the region in which you work. And one of Ed and shared vision of putting me out of work. I love what Ed says about that, because if you do it right in education, what do you need workforce retraining for and workforce development down the line? It's a lofty goal, aspirational, fun, but still true, because if we can do it right and inform kids, educators, parents around all the great careers and how that aligns to their strengths, interests, and values, workforce is a much smaller need post-education and throughout career.
Jump in there, Ed, real quick. So when we took the poster boards back, Peter, and it was just a realization that what was happening in our schools was not preparing our kids for those jobs, or even an awareness. And had it not been for that moment, we wouldn't have asked the question, can we create something that'll fill that gap? And so kids can start to aspire to careers that they didn't know exist prior to then, stealing a line from Ed.
That's right. There's a much bigger component to it, and I think Dr. Martin could speak to this, and then I want to jump back to Saki. But it's not just about preparing young people through this process for marketplace work. Yes, we're talking to Peter Karlstrom here. We have a workforce expert, but the work that's actually happening is not just about equipping or preparing kids for a job. There's a much deeper SEL component that I think Dr. Martin can speak to based on what he's experienced that might come as a surprise to many of the counselor educators that are listening or watching this currently. Would you say, Dr. Martin?
Yeah, I definitely would agree with that. I think that we've taken a much more qualitative approach to really asking kids about how they envision their future. So really borrowing from possible selves research and looking at how they can create a vision of what they want to become in the future. And it doesn't have to be concrete, it doesn't have to be making a decision. It's about opening up possibilities and being able to be encouraged by those visions. Understanding your distinct likes and dislikes. School very often is a place where it's communicated to kids that they have to be good at everything, right? And if they're good at everything, that's kind of it impacts their identity, right? So they can say, well, I'm not good at this one thing, so therefore I must be a failure. But when you tap into your strengths and you can say, well, I'm good at this thing, and then this other thing is a challenge for me. And then they understand that in the future, they could potentially have a life where they're spending the vast majority of their time just doing the things that they're good at doing, right? It kind of provides an insulator effect for them being able to get through those different components in education that might be more challenging for them. So I think it has an overall effect on how they approach their educational experience. I think they're much more capable of persisting through those barriers that a lot of other kids, if they don't have those visions of the future, don't have as many tools to address those barriers. So that's been really exciting to see develop, and just to listen to the stories, the personal stories of how kids are filtering all of the different information. That's also very exciting. I think it becomes more of a personalized approach to education instead of just being this cookie cutter thing where we're preparing batches of kids for different life events. Instead, we're really challenging them to make the experience personal to them and say, okay, this I like, this thing I don't like as much. And that's, I think, a very different experience than what most kids are experiencing in schools.
And that the excitement that I have around what you shared and this idea of the insulator effect and the personalization is, I think, the beauty of what Saki has been leading with the Beable technology. And I didn't think that many of these things were possible, and she knows what I'm talking about, but how do you provide a child access to reading that actually aligns to their interests? and yet she's been able to do this. So Saki, we kind of queued you up earlier around this idea, this question, right? What does it look like? What does it feel like? How is it possible? How does this work? Can you express and explain kind of what your team is designing and what's unique and special about it?
Sure. So, you're back, we always back to the human, right? When you have awesome human, with goals that is bigger than us, everything is possible. And I wanted to share, you talked about, a student being able to realize they were born with strength and, they're gifted. So we were in St. Louis at a classroom trying the solution. And a student was taking their RIASEC, and then they were doing their Lexile assessment. And she finished it and she says, hoo, I'm gifted. I'm only 300 Lexile below, but I am leading, I'm creative. And you should have seen, she was tall. And everybody else looked at her, and it's exactly what we want. We want, you can't overcome challenges without, being strong, without feeling your worth. And the ability to take all your work and putting it in a system that can be there, given to all and be changed just in time, because some of what we're working with students is always the fact that we don't have enough time. Right? We don't have enough time to give kids everything they need. We want them to have 8 hours a day working on their strength and value and expose them to career and essential skills. But we also know that without reading, they're not going to be able to make it. And we also know that some kids come to school, 2 grades below, and some kids, their home is not the same. And not every teacher is a leader teacher. And to take the work that you are doing, for us, job is easy. The goal is, how do we take all of you with the work that you're doing and ensure that every kid in the world can have it, but they can actually move forward on their pace. So the fact that we got 5X with Cajon Valley last summer, and in between September and December, we got 5X expected gain on reading and literacy, is because of these platforms that actually combine all your methodologies. In schools, we have conflicting methodologies. What I need in the classroom is not what I need before and after class. When a teacher is focusing on academics, they're not focusing on essential skills. And when they're focusing on essential skills, so the ability to have a system that switching methodology just in time, just in place, without wasting a minute, bring us a 5X. So the goal for us is to just keep on listening and use technology to what it should be used, is actually to extend the human so everybody can have access to the amazing work that you guys put together.
And Saki, I think that's an important connection to what Dr. Miyashiro has brought to Cajon Valley and the strategic use of one-to-one and technology and the role of technology in this district, and something that might be maybe a new word for maybe some of the folks who are on the line, whether you're counselors, career educators, but this idea of blended learning and personalized learning. David, would you mind, could you frame some of that for the career educators and counselors that might be listening in today, and what that means? Because I think it dovetails so perfectly with what Saki just shared.
Yeah, when we started our technology program, we likened it to technology in other industries. So in healthcare and dentistry, there have been inventions and creations that make the work much more precise, allow the doctors and dentists to do much more efficient work and much less painful work, right? Which we all like. And it doesn't change the role of the doctor or dentist or the nurses or the people that help them. It just empowers them. But in education, we haven't used those advances in technology that way, with machine learning and data science and the different aspects of what technology can do, the blocking and tackling of teaching and learning. What Beable does and what advanced technology does is allow the teacher to have the superpowers that the doctors and dentists do, but specific to learning. And I think that approach, so that kids can be on technology when they need to be, but with the humans and adults shaping their careers around the data that they see, that's the superpower that we're experiencing now that the technology is finally caught up to where we've been going with career development.
And the power of that, I think, this idea of data and using modern technology to help students, teachers in the classrooms, then connects back to the LMI, the labor market information that Peter and his team are collecting as it relates to the hiring projections that are happening in San Diego County in the region. It all gets connected when you have that data talking together, and that's the power, I think, of this team. As you're hearing these educators, Peter, what's running through your mind? Because I know you're a systems thinker, and you're thinking, well, how do we get more students on a path to gainful employment? How do we provide the LMI to the students and the teachers that need it so that students find the right pathways? I'm wondering what you're processing as you hear this conversation.
Well, the sky is the limit, is what I feel, and what we're all accountable for in making this possible. So the LMI is timely, relevant, accessible, understandable, as it can be very data rich. It's already confusing enough for students, and in a mega region, almost 3.5 million people and many different sectors, and for youth to be able to navigate that, to really understand where they might want to go. But it all starts with the RIASEC, other typology that you have that helps them really identify and understand who they are and their unique value. Ed, I'd like to turn it to you and ask you a question, though, because we've known each other 9 years since I joined, and you saw workforce in action before that for some years now, and also as a career counselor and starting and running Think a Bit, the makerspace. How do you enact change and get folks on board in order to be a part of a vision that is very different from the traditional setting?
Well, I think that's a good question. And I mean, I've been able to learn from the best in Dr. Miyashiro, who's cultivated the relationships with a strong board, which is needed. And I'm sure Saki has seen the importance of having a strong board across districts across the United States. You have to, put a leadership team in place that is interested in doing the right work and willing to take risks. You have to create, the systems and put the tools in place so you can actually do the work. And you have to have a pulse on the community, which Dr. Miyashiro has. But then you have to bring in the key partners like we see here today, I think, that can actually help you do the heavy lifting or support in some of that heavy lifting in the vision. Because the thing I love about Dr. Miyashiro is that he's always asking questions. He's always going out to understand what the problem is. He wants to know what problem are we trying to solve. And then from there, he goes out and builds relationships and finds the answers to be able to do the work. And he's also relentless when it comes to doing the work. His level of stamina and vision is second to none. But I would say that's Dr. Miyashiro being Dr. Miyashiro. And I think within all of us as humans have our unique strengths, interests, and values that are needed in the world. And I think the more that we can become aligned in understanding who we are and what our talents are and develop those talents, and hopefully have a manager who develops our talents. I have a best friend at work who tries to develop my talents and works to develop my talents. I think of what Dr. Martin talks about a lot of times, volition, giving kids the opportunity to have a choice and a voice in the work that they're doing. We have 17,000 students in this district. They all have superpowers. And so I think helping them understand who they are and who they want to become, give them a chance to develop those elements. You asked me a simple question, but I have to take it back to the human, to the individual, because when we have a chance to live an example of our best selves, then I think we can all do great work out in the world. So,
and if I could just follow up, that's great. There's naysayers in school and in workforce. How do you overcome that and convince people that really stretching and trying to do this very differently is the right thing to do?
I think that's a better question for David.
Okay.
Well, I would put it back to you, Ed. I mean, talk about the oxygen mask. What we've done is we've the airline analogy is put the mask on yourself first before your young people and others, and you've allowed others to see and hear. And I think most of our educators, Peter, have heard you speak. All of our educators have seen the work that Ed and Ian has done. Saki spoke at our last meeting. It's not me translating things, but allowing people to hear what I hear and see what I see. And when that happens, then it becomes obvious what we need to do. And it's, yeah, your voices.
And Ian, yeah, it's your voices. Saki, what have you seen? I mean, you've worked with countless number of education leaders.
So first, I guess, is how much you care. So when you care, this is bigger than you. So you, as everybody said, you guys do whatever it takes. But I think it's important, the fact that you combine, your goals and new goals with academic. I think it's something very important. It's in districts, they took it on, even the district that took your work on, but they put it as another to do, another goal. And they did not combine it, every teacher, every classroom. So if something is important, it's always important. And I think you did such an awesome job that it's not in a silo, it's not standalone. It's part of the whole child is every day, 24 hours. And I think that this is a big difference. So when we teach them reading, when we teach them math, when we go out to the, outside for break, it's always the whole child. And I think that that's very, very unique and, make it very successful because it's very hard to have many goals in one district.
It's true. So when we think about that ecosystem-wide, systemic and ecosystem-wide approach, the importance of goals, and certainly it's something that happens within the schoolhouse and the school community. But then we look at those other partners and actors within the ecosystem. And that brings me to the topic of a 2-gen strategy. And I think this has been a really important aspect of our work and one that I'd love to have Peter comment on. But I'd like to start with Dr. Martin, too, about what we know about the importance of a 2-gen strategy, the importance of including families within this process of career development and possible selves. Why is this important?
Well, the research is very clear in terms of how decisions are made, especially the first decisions about what to study and what type of work sector to go into is highly influenced by families and by parents. And so being able to really be on the same page with parents and to have conversations about their students, their children's futures is crucial. And I think when this first started, there was an assumption there that that parents maybe might not be as engaged in these conversations. They might not understand what we're trying to accomplish in classrooms. But what we've learned is that parents are very engaged in this, that they can go along, with us, and they love to do the activities and learn about themselves, and then that whole transformational process can occur together. And so parents have really become partners within this work to a degree that was just that again is just extremely surprising, and but also really heartwarming. It's amazing to see a parent that has made personal discoveries and how they're really encouraging their students to make those own discoveries about themselves and to structure work in a way that's going to make them happy, right? That's going to bring about not only financial stability, but it's going to bring them joy and fulfillment throughout their lives, and that's just a really exciting thing to see. So the 2-gen strategy, I think, is still evolving, but one where there's a lot of excitement, and it's really become a key component of the world of work.
And something that we couldn't have executed without the support of our workforce board. And Peter, your team stepped up very early on to provide resources and support for families. So it's not just about helping the families understand what students are learning in the classroom, but it's also in some cases about helping our families develop their own vision of their future possible selves, and maybe it's of their current selves. And Peter, I'm wondering what, when you're discussing this idea of a 2-gen strategy within your team, what are the things that we would need to know about workforce to help us, or some of our listeners maybe frame those conversations with their workforce boards to consider supporting a school district such as ours in the way that you have with parents and 2Gen?
Mm-hmm. Well, 2Gen has become so central to our work in recent years that it's one of our 5 key strategic initiatives that we work on. So to transform the career centers that we're able to fund through the Department of Labor dollars and other initiatives that we put together, we have to serve the whole family. The more we can empower the parents, grandparents who may be parenting as well, to be able to provide them with upskilling, reskilling to be most relevant and happy in the new economy is critical. So we have to serve the whole family and have supports in place so that we can empower each. And the more successful the parents and grandparents are, they're setting the example for the student too on their own trajectory. So we have to be very holistic in this approach. And this is very different in the workforce space, maybe in general across the country, and where I would encourage attendees to really challenge your workforce board to address this or think about it if they're not familiar with it and what part they can play, because workforce boards can be quite bureaucratic because it's public money coming into the region that then goes out to providers across the region, and that's the bulk of the work, but we can and must do more. And so in our area, we've been fortunate by tapping into other investors and supporters from philanthropy to the private sector to really do initiatives like this so that we're not just beholden to the red tape that can come with the public dollars. So 2Gen is going to uplift our families, our neighborhoods, our communities, and workforce development really needs to be very intentional about the work they do there.
And I know from the work that you've just articulated and described to us, the importance thereof. I know that the work at Beable also has a very close connection to the parent role. And yeah, I'm wondering, Saki, if you can kind of describe your thinking around the role of parents within Beable and working and partnering with the teacher, but also the student, and why that's so important, and what you've seen as it relates to performance and growth and kind of the impact of that parent involvement through Beable.
Sure, thank you. So maybe we'll start with the student, because right now we're all focusing on the students, then we'll go on the support teams that are all supporting our students to what we say gainful employment. I think that the challenge many times when we have initiatives, that many of us do not realize that we have different students in every class. And student comes, with different, strengths and interests and value, also different reading level, different ability. And that creates a challenge when we want to provide them information, because everything needs to be provided to every student. Maybe I would have been a surgeon, but I couldn't get the information. So the ability to provide students with exposure, so they have a dream, and then they look at the academic as my way to get to my dream, change how much they want willing to work hard, their whole fun, while I'm going towards my goal. But the ability to also understand how to give them the information, what reading level, what scaffolding that they need, what language support they need, how much time on tasks they need. So not one size fits all. Every student needs different time on tasks, need different scaffolding. They move out from different scaffolding, one sooner than the other. And the idea that we are treating them one size fits all does not work. So in a district like Cajon that actually took advantage and said, we're going to find out for every student who they are, what's their dream, what's their strengths, what's their value, what's their favorite food, where they want to live, what's their reading level, what scaffoldings they need, and then combining it all for the best outcomes. So everything we're going to provide, all the information that we're going to provide to them, we'll look at their reading level, we'll look at their scaffoldings they need, we'll look at what their interest. Why shouldn't we give them extra reading material that have to do with something they want to read? Why shouldn't we give them student choice? At the same time, we also understand that we're in school for academic. So combining our, great content, grade appropriate content, grade appropriate item on the test. You know, the idea is let's be smart, not only right. So can we be right for academic and right for the whole child and right with giving them information? And if you envision that student, so we understand, you know, what they need in terms of reading level, in terms of the scaffolding they need, how much time on task, and at the same time, they share with us their dreams, their goal, their strength, their value, and now we're all coming together, looking at the same child, not only seeing portion of the child, and now we're all working together. So that student is a different student. They're excited, they have this vision that they're working hard, and they understand I maybe need to do 3 hours a day while my friend is doing only 1 hour. But I'm extraordinary because I picked a different goal, a different path. It's not because I'm a poor reader. It changed the environment. It changed how they feel about themselves, how teacher feels about that student. So the same for our educators, the same for our parents. Parents need to understand we didn't give parents enough information. Parents speak different languages. Parents don't have that information. You know, we're from a different generation. I'm from a different generation. You're talking about two gen. How do we provide the parents information in bite size so they can understand and they understand their journey, so their child need to go and become supportive, that they understand who's their child, that they understand their strength and value. So we all coming together as support and not coming together, you know, against each other. And in Cajon Valley is actually the, you know, the proof of the concept. We got 5 times expected gain in reading. I can tell you, we never saw 5 times expected gain in regular school, and kids come to school with a teacher without the virus, and get 5 times expected gain during COVID when kids were some in, some out, virtual, no time, no space in anybody's brain to expand, to learn new solutions. You know, that's why I'm honored to be here. You guys are just, you know, I look up to you.
Thank you, Saki. Which is, your comments are leading me to want to ask David about accountability and measure, because it makes me feel like we're measuring the wrong things.
The
You
invitation.
can't leave us hanging, though. You can't leave us hanging, Dr. Miyashiro.
I think it's very obvious, and hopefully for everyone that's watching, that it's obvious that university and workforce and districts and technologists should be in collaboration together, just as we are, because it works. Prior to the pandemic, a lot of the work that we were focusing on with Peter's team and the research from the workforce development was childcare. One of the barriers for a strong workforce and for income mobility is the time and the access for parents, working parents, to make that next move or to have someone watch their kids. And we were studying that and looking at that. And then when the pandemic happened, that just exacerbated. We realized that our essential workers that have to report to work in person, in healthcare, in law enforcement, and safety, if we don't work, they don't work. And our parents told us we don't have an option, which is why we opened our schools immediately after we were shut down, because we recognized from the research that Peter's team had shown, but also listening to our families, that we are essential workers. We are part of an ecosystem. And I love that we're talking about families and the whole picture, because between the Workforce Development Board and the district and our universities and our support systems, we can do a lot better with our tax dollars, and if we work together. And it's just so obvious. We'd love to hear final thoughts from our partners on that concept, but it's just so obvious to me.
Ian, you've been in schools, you've been teaching, training counselors, teachers, etc. How does that strike you, hearing that from a superintendent?
It's amazing. It's just such a great opportunity, and really, if I was to kind of create a metaphor for what's happening in Cajon Valley. So you were at Qualcomm at Think a Bit, and for those that don't know, that's an engineering large corporation. And Ed brought many students, middle school students, to a day-long experience where they get to be exposed and experiment with the potential of becoming an engineer. And that is an exciting day. You know, students get really fired up about what that experience is like. And so what Cajon Valley has really done is they've taken that lab environment, that idea that you get to experience things and put your hands on things and meet people, and they've really spread that out to an entire district. And I think that just is a different experience than what most kids are exposed to. And so that's what's so exciting to see, that teachers are on board, families are on board, partners can say like, oh, this totally makes sense. Let's do more of this. And so that's what Cajon Valley is doing, just solving really, interesting problems and being extremely innovative. And I'm just really, really happy to be along for the ride. So yeah, thank you very much.
We're just about time. Thank you, Dr. Martin. Saki, I don't know, final comments from Saki and Peter before we close out. David, Dr. Miyashiro?
I will say we are just starting, so watch out. This is just the beginning of helping all kids, with a smile to a better future. So just watch out.
Well, it has transformed our work, and I'm more excited about this than ever before, because when we can do workforce development early on, as we all should, we can make our society so much better and so many more happy, fulfilled lives, and that's the end game. And for me, it's very personal too. I have a junior and a 7th grader at home, and I wish they were in Cajon Valley, because they're not getting enough of this in their own school districts. They need to be prepared for what's out there. They can't navigate like 2 parents at home who can help them in that process, but that's not the norm. So we've got to do better across the whole country. Thank you for leadership on this day.
Dr. Miyashiro?
I think you have to close this with prayer, Ed.
No. Oh my. Well, my prayer is that every child would know their unique strengths, interests, and values and find their place in the world, and that all people will work better together to help that to be possible for every child. So I appreciate all of you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to support this conversation. You've meant the world to me, all of you. And for all those of you who are on the call, either in person or one day perhaps recorded, we just invite you to be a part of our work and our journey. So don't hesitate to reach out to any and all of us. We'll be happy to serve you in any way, shape, or form that we can. And we just encourage you on your journey. When it gets really hard, just keep going, and we'll be here to support you. So thank you for all you do.
Thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
Thank you to Ed and all of our presenters today. Everyone, as I said, we will be, the webinar today was recorded. I will be sending out a follow-up email next week with the link to the recording and information about your continuing education. So thank you again to Ed and all of our presenters today, and I hope everybody has a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Bye-bye.